Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. In a span of less than 30 minutes, the United States struck 85 different targets spread across 7 cities in Iraq and Syria. These American airstrikes were carried out as a reprisal against a drone attack on an American base in Jordan, in which 3 American soldiers were killed and 40 others were injured. And according to the Americans, this is just the beginning of a multi-tiered response. Even though both the Americans and the Iranians have repeatedly insisted that neither side wants a full-blown conflict. But what is abundantly clear is that the Israel-Gaza war that began on the 7th of October has spread way beyond the frontiers of Gaza. By backing the Israeli offensive in the Gaza Strip to the hilt, the United States is getting more and more involved in this new West Asia conflict. And even if the political leaders at this moment are not willing to say it out loud, what is playing out is a subtle but a steady proxy war between the United States and Iran. Our next report gets more details. This is the moment when the American fighter jets took off to strike targets deep inside Iraq and Syria. And according to the US Central Command, 125 precision munitions were dropped on 85 different targets, including the command and control operation centers, intelligence centers, weapon storage depots, and supply chain facilities of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and other affiliated armed groups backed by Tehran. The IRGC is the elite military unit of the Iranian armed forces. In a tweet put out by the American President Joe Biden, the Commander-in-Chief of the American Armed Forces insisted that the United States does not seek a conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world, but the United States would respond to anyone who did it harm. The Americans claimed that all targets that were hit were military infrastructure that had been used to strike at various American bases in the region. But the Iraqi government has condemned the attacks as a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, stating that at least about 16 people were killed and over 25 others injured, including many civilians. The American airstrikes have come in response to the deadly unmanned drone attack that took place on an American military base in Jordan called Tower 22. 3 American soldiers were killed, including 23-year-old Breonna Alexandria Moffett, 24-year-old Kennedy Landon Sanders, and 46-year-old Sergeant William Jerome Rivers, while 40 other American soldiers sustained injuries. Since the Israel-Gaza war began on the 7th of October, there have been at least about 150 attacks on different American bases in the Middle East. But the attack in Jordan is being seen as an inflection point in this conflict.
So it seems that this attack was carried out by a group calling itself the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. That's not a real group. That's a name that's been used by various militias, Iranian-backed militias that tend to be Iraqi but also operate in Syria. And they've been using that name during the Gaza conflict as they have stepped up drone attacks and missile attacks on US interests. Previously, the US has responded by targeting senior leaders, by killing members of the groups who have been about to launch attacks. So this will have to be an escalation from that. And that's quite serious, not least because these groups are officially part of the Iraqi security services. And so this can't be done without the Iraqi state being involved.
Iran's axis of resistance includes different groups that are spread across the Middle East. And ever since the Israel-Gaza war has broken out, they've repeatedly struck American targets in the region. In Yemen, the Houthis are backed by Iran. In Lebanon, the Hezbollah has the backing of Tehran. In Iraq, there are several Shiite militant factions such as the Kataib Hezbollah, the hardline Sunni group, the Hashid Shabi, the Asa'ib Ahle al-Haq, and the Al-Badr organization that are backed by Iran. The American president bore witness to the remains of the 3 American soldiers as they were brought back home. The American backing of the Israeli offensive has meant that American targets are being viewed as fair game by militant factions who claim that they are carrying out these attacks in solidarity with the Palestinians who are facing a humanitarian catastrophe. While many others have even questioned what American troops are doing in Iraq and Syria anyway. The Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, echoing the American President Joe Biden's statement, insisted that Iran too is not looking for a war, but in the same breath reiterated that Iran would not be bullied.
We have said many times we will not initiate any war, but if anyone wants to bully, Iran will respond firmly. The military power of Iran in the region is not and never will be a threat to any country. Rather, it ensures the security of the countries in the region.
At the moment, the American priority seems to be to back the Israeli offensive in Gaza, while at the same time to manage the upheavals that have been created by the Israeli offensive in the Gaza Strip. But what this has sparked is a proxy war between the United States and other Iranian-backed factions in the whole of the Middle East.
In terms of escalation in the Middle East, our goal was to make sure that we contain this crisis in Gaza, and that we prevented things from spreading to a wider conflict. Now, there's a lot of activity in the region, but there's always been a lot of activity in the region, and you know well that Iranian proxy groups have been attacking our troops even well before October 7th.
The American airstrikes in Iraq and Syria are meant to be loud, but their echoes are not meant to spark a larger war. Oftentimes, conflagrations break out as a result of a miscalculation. At the moment, the United States and Iran are engaged in a proxy war. But what no one can predict is when this proxy war will turn into an all-out conflict.